Hello, folks. Welcome to the Genuinely Interested podcast. I'm your host, Roy Bensby. This podcast is an opportunity for me to speak with some of the most interesting people I know, either with amazing talents or achievements or unbelievable life stories or just invaluable insights into areas which they have dedicated their lives to studying. I sit down with these amazing individuals from across the planet and I try to ask them questions that will hopefully help you, the listener, extract something valuable or learn something new or just hopefully get inspired by. You can find all the episodes for the podcast on all the major podcasting platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, Google, Overcast, iHeartRadio, literally all of them. It's there. If you love the show, if it adds value to your life in any way, shape, or form, please leave reviews on iTunes. It really helps grow the podcast. It puts it up there so more people can see it. You can also find all the episodes and everything else, all the information that's updated regularly on the website, which is roybensv.com, ROYBENTZVI.com. And you can sign up for updates as well. Also been updating the YouTube channel. So I've been uploading old episodes pretty much on a daily basis. So you can find it there. And in the future, I hope to make video podcasting as well. If that's something you guys want to check out and are interested in, please shoot me email. I'd love to hear from you. And also make sure to check out the social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter. I post there daily. And lastly, if you guys want to support and help grow the podcast, please go to Buy Me a Coffee or Anchor or Patreon. It is an endeavor to grow this podcast and make it what it should be. And it takes a village. So I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. I see that there are literally listeners from all over the world in each and every country. So thank you to everyone and on to the show. All right, let me introduce this week's guest, Ed Lattimore. His website is edlattimore.com. Stoic Street Smarts is in the headline. And yeah, he's a super, super cool guy. He's a former pro boxer, best-selling author. He's a blogger and I guess a life coach, you could say. He's grown a massive audience on social media and he's very well respected both in the boxing world and outside of it. So we had a really great and fascinating and insightful conversation. So I don't want to take up too much time in this intro. I'm going to jump right into it. So I hope you guys enjoy this week's episode. And without further ado, here is Ed Lattimore. Enjoy the episode, friends.
The Genuinely Interested Podcast.
Hey, Ed.
Hey, how are you today, man?
I'm good, man. How are you doing? You look very comfortable in your cardigan. Is that a cardigan?
I actually don't know what to. Okay, so I believe the official term is a Portuguese fisherman sweater, because
Oh, yeah?
so like, why do I have this? I lived in Portugal last year. When I was saying before we started how this is the apartment, I doubt it'll be a year since I moved in. This is where we moved back to, and when we moved back to here. It was during the pandemic and everything. But we were over there because my fiance is a Portuguese citizen. She was raised over there. Was born there, raised. She was like 12, and then came over. So even if it wasn't for the pandemic, I would have had to leave eventually. She didn't. But one day we were out shopping and I saw these great sweaters, and her mom had actually given me one like this, not quite, but in terms of the stitching, identical. And I saw this in the Algarve. We were in, Lagos, and I picked it up, and I really like it. And you know why I like it? Well, this is cool. Like first of all, everywhere I go, like someone comments on it because like no one has it here. This is not an American thing, but when I wear it someplace, people will go, "Oh, that's a nice sweater." Or they comment on it. So I'm
Well,
a
I
big
mean,
fan of this.
it looks comfortable as fuck. It just looks like one of those things you want to just curl up in, like like a warm bed. It just looks something you want to cuddle in. So it looks very
Very,
comfortable.
very, very comfortable. appropriate for like I've worn it. What it's like 60 something right now. But 60 something in the shade, mind you. And it works anywhere from like I'd say from like 50 to like 65, which is where I live in the country in the United States. The temperature spends a lot of time in that range throughout the day, all year round, except like deep winter and hot summer. But I'll get great use out of this probably the next 2 months. Well into the mornings of June until like the second part of June where like it's so hot during the day that at night it only goes down to like 60 and it's not a cool comfortable 60. It's like a heat, humidity type 60.
Yeah, I'm one of the few that love winter. When December comes around, I'm like giddy. I love it. But around April is when I'm like, all right, I need like my body physically needs that sun. Like I just sit outside and I'm like, I need vitamin D. That 5 6 months of winter was
Yeah,
beautiful, but I need that transition like now.
my plan going forward, I'm gonna have. I'm not a big home ownership guy. That goal was never important to me. I suppose if one day in the future, a lot of kids come into the future, come into the plan or whatever, and come into the life, maybe. But even still, I like my mobility and everything. I really, it just that continues to, and I don't like thinking about a lot of things you have to think about as a homeowner. I think about this and I go back and forth on it. But the beauty of that mentality is that you can kind of up and go when you want. You have a lease or whatever, but well, you just have somebody come over. Like I'm fortunate that I have a sister, and I can be like, hey, why don't you come, watch the place or whatever, and while I disappear, and just I'll cover the rent. Don't worry about that, and just go somewhere for a month or two, and it ends up being a really convenient way. You don't have to worry. You get the best of whatever you want out of life. Some people want to put the roots down, get the white picket fence and a big old home, and I can do that, but I'm not interested in it. And I say I can do it because I think a lot of times what people do with their goals is they turn their necessity into a virtue. They can't do something, so it's like I want to do the other thing. And the reality is, unless you're selecting from options, you don't know that. And I know I'm very much selecting from options, and this is what's it, how I want to live.
Yeah.
And it's good, it's fun. My cat's here with me out here on the porch right now.
Cats are so independent, man. I wish my dogs were that. And dogs are just so needy. I love my dogs to death, but they're so needy. It's like a kid. Like you have to constantly take care of them, take them out, feed them, pet them. They just need attention 24/7. And cats, like my wife's friend, she has cats. Like they couldn't care less. Like they're
Nope,
independent.
the cat'll disappear.
Yeah.
And then show up when it's hungry usually. Then it'll stick around like it's gracing us with its presence, and then it goes off and we'll see it. He'll decide he wants to come out and hang out on the porch with me. He's hanging out in the corner right now. So that's a fun time. I'm a big fan of the feline.
And they're amazing hunters too. I think I saw somewhere where they're like the fifth best hunter out of all the animal kingdom. Like they're
Uh, some
amazing
some
hunting.
Sometimes, and then these instincts never go away, I guess, no matter how like domestic. Like he's looking at something right now. I don't know if it's a bird or a bug, but he's fixated on it. And when he's in the apartment, he'll see a bird on the balcony or something and decide he has to go attack it. And I'm just like, what in the world? It actually ran into the window once. Just uh instinct though. Just you follow it whether you want to or not.
100%. All right. So I mean, your story is a very interesting one. I feel like you can write 6 books. It seems because you've lived like 6 lives almost. It seems like in the short span of time. but
Yeah, I
I want to talk, and I don't know if we're going to be able to cover all of it because it's so vast, but I want to try and get to some parts of it, and I want to start off with the boxing career.
Oh,
I think
okay,
I think
okay,
that's
yeah.
what you're obviously most famous for. So you were a pro boxer. I believe it was around 6 years that you fought, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. I'm trying to think. I mean, well, because what happens is like the Tom Conda runs together, and what's funny. Okay, now I can think about it because I know what my pro debut was and I know what my last time in the ring was, and it wasn't as long as I thought it was. Right, it was only like actively fighting 5 years and prepping to fight probably 6 ish, right? But well, that's just my professional career. A lot of people don't understand or don't realize this, at least outside of um the mainstream sports. People understand there's like a draft for football and basketball and everything, and those guys got to train their whole lives, and then if they make it, they turn pro. Well, there's a similar process in boxing, not identical in many ways, and that's positive and negative because the pros and cons to it. But there are just I fought as an amateur. I think that was about 5 years as well, for 4 to 5, because when I remember I remember the year I started fighting was right before the 2008 Olympics, and that was where Deontay Wilder went to Beijing, and then 2012 was London. Those were the games I was trying to qualify for and didn't make it. So that's the time period. Yeah. So you got about a 10 to 11 year fight career actively training, and I'm still part of the community, fairly involved, at least locally, and also with my writing, that's opened up some gates to deliver commentary. I've got a bunch of articles on my site about writing, and that keeps me in the loop as kind of a respected figurehead, the guy who knows what he's talking about. I was just the sparring partner for Roy Jones Jr. when he was getting ready for his Mike Tyson the fight that they did. So kept in shape, kept the skills sharp, still right. Once you fight, you don't really stop thinking about the world in terms of fighting and what it does for you. I think what happens to a lot of guys, their forces just kind of abandon that identity for many reasons. Fortunately, none of those reasons apply to me. um, because I'm one of the what people don't understand, man. Like there is to say there is no money in boxing is erroneous, or at the very least inaccurate to the point of lunacy. Because who would do that for free? But there's so little money that most fighters are going to have to get a job when they stop. Most of us have a job when we're fighting, and I was no different. My jobs are a little different because of what I was trying to do with my life. Uh, I ended up first I did end up getting signed, which really helped, but I was in school and getting money from the military because I was in school, so that really helped. And but if it wasn't for that, yeah, I would have had to work just like everyone else, and I was still working. In many ways, it was more difficult because I had to keep a certain GPA in a fairly difficult major to make sure that I got enough money to where I kept my benefits so I could continue
What was the major?
to fight. I got my degrees in physics.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not an easy
No,
major to
no, you
pursue.
can't. What I learned studying physics. I mean, and I was never arrogant enough to think it was anything different. I think I underestimated how much effort it would take, or maybe overestimated my intelligence. You can't phone that in, like how some things you just kind of go and memorize the end. No, 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 no. Like your
Yeah.
thought process fundamentally has to change. You have to really understand what you're looking at because the way the problems are. the problems you encounter. You're not just going, okay, you learn the formula, plug it in. Nah, we were. I actually had a professor who give us a pretty serious lecture after the class average on something was miserable, and he was like, you can't, you in physics you can't plug and chug. You can't just put numbers into a formula and get something out. You have to look at the problem and decide what tools are going to be best to help you get as close as you possibly can to the answer. So, is he like to say, don't use a formula unless you can derive it, which doesn't mean create the formula from scratch, but you should understand what the formula is doing, what relationship it's making between two quantities, so you can decide if what you're trying to solve for is possible with the equation you're using. Because a lot of people, because then this is just the education in general, so in this country, how it trains us to, it doesn't really train how to think. And physics, you have to think. You're not just, there's a reason why, if you look at the stats on the GRE for people entering grad school, the physics major score the highest. Not just the quantitative aspect, what you would expect because of all the math, but also in the verbal. Because we have to, I tell people, the thing that made me the writer I am today, and you can see the difference in my writing for how long I've been blogging. There's stuff I don't even keep up anymore. One of the big differences is that I had got a rigorous education on how to explain my thought process, how to defend my stance, how to use the correct words. Because in physics, the correct word means something. For example, colloquially speaking, uh, when we say, speed up or slow down, that's that's just what it is. In physics is a difference. Speed doesn't have a vector. Velocity does. What do you mean? Oh, do you mean accelerate or do you mean decelerate? These little things. So yeah, I know that was a tangent from the original question, but my point was to taking it back to boxing. My point was that uh, we all have to work, and that's never going to go away for the just. I mean, until something dramatically changes in boxing. Well, which it looks like, with the internet might be, but there's no money in the game. You
Well,
just,
the crazy stat I saw was that 1% of the fighters make 99% of the money in boxing.
man, and that is probably an overstatement because it sounds good.
Yeah.
Like that's easy to say. Like the brain goes 199, 100%, right? The reality is it's probably closer. It's probably closer. I mean, it's definitely less than 1%.
Mhm.
Because like I'll break down a card, just for you got a pay-per-view card. What a lot of people don't know is when you have these cards, it's an all-day event. What you see on TV are the fights that they decided to put on TV because of various contractual obligations. And the main guy, makes me, let's say, $1 million. That's the prize for the purse for the two guys fighting in the main event. But that's the prize. That's the purse. What they get is 500, 500. Then but then the undercard or the co-main event. That's a significant drop off. You're lucky if you're seeing six figures for a co-main event. And then you got the undercard. Those are all guys making anyway. They're probably making four figures. In fact, they should be. I would be surprised if they're not. And this all varies by network and everything like that. But these are just the general degree of magnitude drop off. Seven figures divided by two guys. If it's not a pay per view fight, down to for co-main event, we're looking at mid five figures if it's good, and then mid but could be low, and then your undercards, your three or four fights, or really two or three of these days, not the main event. And then there's a bunch of fights all day, like freaking 15 fights
Nothing.
that don't make it, and those guys are getting paid nothing. And the game is hard because you 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 fight, let's say, six times a year. I had a pretty decent contract, so I can like look at these numbers and think, if I had kids or something, or I lived in like New York City or California, which are like big hubs, or in the DC, there's no like you're not living a life of luxury, man. You are working. You probably will have to get a second job to support everything.
Hmm.
It's just not gonna happen. So
Yeah.
um, there's not a lot of money. Most of the money goes to the top guys because I mean they're the guys that people tune in to see. I mean, so I get the distribution. They're the guys that make it even possible for you to pay a small amount
Yeah.
to the other guys. And then you're being injured. Fortunately, there's a blanket insurance that covers any injury you sustain during the fight, but during training, for example, when I was an amateur, um, I had a blowout fracture. Actually, I've had it in both eyes. One as an amateur, one as a professional. But as an amateur, when I got it, fortunately, I was signed with this program and they covered everything. But I got it in sparring. If I was just a normal regular guy, I'd have to pay for that. My
Yeah.
health insurance I'd have to come out of my pocket for that. And I couldn't train for like 4 months while I was in recovery. When I got it the second time, it wasn't bad enough to require surgery, but I had to pay for the hospital visit this time, and that was enough.
Yeah.
It was like an $8,000 hospital visit. It's crazy,
Yeah.
but
No.
that's the reality of fighting. So anyone that does fighting, people don't, and they stick with it. It's not a lot of people's first choice.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, even if you look at MMA, right? UFC, which is the best and the biggest organization, if you have whatever, let's say the Stipe Ngannou fight, the people on the undercard on the prelims, the first 2-3 fights, the majority of them are making around 5,000 and 5,000 or 10,000,
yeah.
10,000. Let's say the guy and the guy that's on that preliminary card, he didn't train less hard than Stipe or Conor McGregor. He trained just as much. He put in the time, he put in all the work. And then let's say he ends up losing that fight. He gets $5,000 for
Yep.
3-4 months of work. Out of that, he has to take like 20% for management, for the
Oh,
for the
right. I forgot all about
and the
that. Yeah. You
the
know,
state income, right? So they take another percentage out. He ends up probably losing money.
you're walking away. You can just, numbers. But and I had once again, I think I had a fair deal, not overly aggressive, not overly generous. My coach got 13%, my manager got 12. So immediately off the jump, I'm losing 25% of whatever I earn. That's before any of the incidental fees that I incur, mainly diet and transportation to and fro. And then you can't forget Uncle Sam. He's gonna get his cut. He's gonna get his cut two ways after. He's gonna get his cut in the state you fought and in the state you live. Now, hopefully, that's the same a lot of times, but not always. you lose you lose a lot of that money, man. It's not.
Is
If
that why a lot of
you
the fights happen in Vegas? Because fighters don't have to pay that there?
no, not well, yeah. Not only that, but they have to if they so funny thing happens. There are a few meccas of fighting, right? And when why these meccas exist, when you look at it from a skill wise standpoint, or even a geographic standpoint, it doesn't make sense. When you look at the tax laws, it makes sense that where are fighting meccas in the United States right now? Vegas or Nevada in general. Nevada, they really try to avoid having fights in California, but they'll do it in LA if it's a big enough venue. But Nevada, Ohio, Florida, Texas, Florida and Texas is big. And what are Florida and Texas have incredibly generous state taxes in that regard. So they're trying to put they're trying to put a fight where not only would it ain't really about the fighter, it's about the promoter. The promoter is going to pay less. Look, the Anthony Joshua Andy Ruiz fight that took place in wherever Abu Dhabi is, right? but there's no entertainment tax there. That was the big reason. So they probably made an extra like $4 or $5 million just because they decided to have it there, and that's possible because of telecommunications.
Yeah.
I was talking. The internet makes that possible. People stay up and they're big, and Josh was a big enough star where people are going to stay up and watch that fight. Well, at least in the when did I watch it? I was in Portugal for both the Joshua Ruiz 2. Yeah, not one. Joshua Ruiz 2. I was in Portugal, right? 'Cause I remember I was from one. And so that's Europe, which is that's the same time zone as London, the UK, where Josh was from. And it was I think it was like 8 in the evening for me. It was like 9 or 8 in the evening because a buddy of mine, he streamed it for me because I could because I have a DAZN subscription, but I guess they weren't letting it happen in Portugal, so my DAZN wasn't working, but so he streamed it in for me through I think he set it up on Skype or whatever, and just pointed his computer at the Skype at the screen, and then let me watch.
Don't tell the powers that be. Don't say anything. It's
Oh
never
yeah, yeah.
Don't worry, he pays a subscription. Is that how you say it? Dazan? I don't know how to pronounce that shit.
The zone,
Zone,
DAZN.
Dazan?
People know what I'm talking about when I
Yeah,
say it,
yeah.
which
No,
is
I
what
I
matters.
just don't know how it's pronounced. Honestly, like I hear
Yeah.
people say it in all these different
Yeah,
variations.
they say DAZN. I've heard DAZN. I say DAZN.
Okay,
Yeah.
Dazan it is, man.
But yeah,
Uh,
man, it was weird, and I didn't feel bad because I paid for the subscription. I just happened to be in Portugal when it was on, so I was like, man, that's crazy. This way, and they really and dude, I must have downloaded like 4 different VPNs trying to beat that thing. They were not with it.
what do you feel about what's happening right now with celebrity boxing? For me, it's I don't know. I have, I guess, mixed emotions about it. For one, I don't see that happening in any other sport. Like I don't see amateurs coming into wrestling or into MMA or into golf or baseball or basketball. Like, hey, because I'm a celebrity and I have X amount of followers, or I'm a movie star. Let me go and make a lot of money in this sport. But it does happen in boxing and only boxing for some reason. And on the one hand, I understand the people that say, "Oh, this is drawing eyes to it," but I think it cheapens the sport a little bit. But what do you think?
Okay, so there's a few things going on. This is a good question. So first, why boxing as opposed to MMA?
Yeah.
I think that boxing is easier to understand and easier to transmit to the public, right? Because you want something simple, and boxing is simple. It's two guys in a ring throwing gloves. The analogies for boxing are more are metaphors. There are more of them. It's easier for people to go, okay, we're gonna fight, we're gonna box, we're gonna slug it out. Uh, MMA is just more complex, and that complexity does not lend itself to easy entry. If that makes sense. On top of that, and this is gonna blow your mind, because it blew my mind, and I consider myself um, a little more than I'm not a lay person when it comes to
Yeah.
fighting. In other words, right? Is that the for a while MMA's audience was bigger than boxing's. They were like, okay, well, the MMA failed to do something really interesting that kind of automatically has happened with boxing because of the age of the sport and how long it's been. They have not been able to convert or turn over their fan base, right? They haven't been able to attract new blood at the same rate that boxing has been able to, which is translated to the average age of an MMA fan continues to go up, which is nuts to me. I'm like, huh, because you would expect
I would
uh
think it's the opposite.
yeah, right. That's what you would expect. But I guess when you look at the pay-per-view numbers, the numbers aren't as big as they were in the 2000s with the big era of MMA. I would say it was the 2000s when they were doing a freaking fight a month on pay-per-view, and
Yeah.
there was just a lot to the sport. It was big and it was exciting. But the staying power uh MMA is notoriously bad at building superstars. Like, like it is just not good at it. I mean, one would argue the first guy who really transcended the sport, in terms of his recognizability, name, household, is Conor McGregor, and that happened more likely because of his fight with Floyd Mayweather.
No, he was big
I,
before, and that's why the Floyd fight happened, I
well,
think.
he was big, but there's big in your sport, right? What
Yeah.
Conor was, right? And then there is big, to all sports fans ish, and then there is, you show up in rap songs, you become a household name. You
Yeah,
become
yeah,
like
yeah.
an icon. I
Yeah.
don't think Connor was there. I think Connor was clearly one, two, not really three. I think that deal with Mayweather, brings a lot more eyes to MMA and the sport in general. Because remember, that's not the first time they've done that. They did the whole thing with the hell was his name? Randy Couture and James Toney. They did the same thing. And they did it with MMA. Not as popular, right?
Well,
So,
it was
but
almost a foregone conclusion what was going to happen in that fight.
right. And it was, but here's the thing: to anybody who knows the game, that outcome with Mayweather and McGregor was foregone. I mean, Mayweather. I think anybody who's watched even two of Mayweather's fights understood that Mayweather was carrying him for the sake of entertainment. And that's a
Yeah,
smart thing. But if
yeah,
Mayweather really wanted to get that guy out of there, I mean, this is a guy. Man, he's fought the best guys in the world at boxing. He can't get rid of it yet, right? So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
carrying him and having a good time. Anyhow, so to answer that one aspect of it, that is, the boxing is just easier to put the ideas out there. It's more popular, I think, with a um yeah, that's the thing. Boxing still's got the get boxing's in the Olympics. Boxing is still that thing that, like, or was that thing anyhow. Well, no, I guess kind of now. That's the other thing too. Um, Superstars are now reemerging in boxing, and that's good because boxing is great because they have to. They boxing survives on the superstars. MMA doesn't. That's probably the big difference. While more people tend to have like people recognize and understand like who Deontay Wilder is. I would think more people know and recognize Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, as opposed to Francis Ngannou, Daniel Cormier, and Stipe Miocic, right? Like people know those guys on site, but even if you had Jimmy, like I mean, I wouldn't know who the Nagano was on site, but I've heard Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, and that's part of it because he's just this big, larger than life character.
I
Uh,
wonder if because like we're both biased in a way. Like I'm a massive. Well, I love all
right.
majority of martial arts. Like I watch all the MMA fights. I watch a lot of boxing. I watch Muay Thai. I watch all, and you're obviously a massive, boxing fan. I
Right.
wonder if
So
the general public, someone that just he doesn't really care about those type of sports,
I
is into
I'd have to,
football.
yeah.
What do you think?
Oh, it's hard because I'm biased. I just look at
Yeah,
the data, right?
yeah,
And the data says that the MMA fan base is, for the first time, at least 2 years ago, and I think I looked at this, lagging behind boxing. And the way they measure that is the only way you really can measure it, which is pay per view buys, and then from there they can extract the data and figure out kind of who, what, where, how. All right. So with that said, that explains the why boxing and other sports is to my feelings about whether it cheapens the sport, or whether the pros outweigh the cons, i.e. the odds on the sport outweighs the cheapening that occurs. So my perspective is probably, okay, so my perspective is from that of the fighter side and understanding. And also, I was fortunate enough to be intelligent and temperamental enough to be able to sit down with promoters and really understand the books and what was going on. Anything that helps the sport grow is good. Period. they're like there's and
There's
this
no
is
but.
why there is no but. Anything that brings attention and buyers and fans to the sport uh, is good because the sport lives and dies by public interest. That's all sports. We just don't think about it that much because in the big four in this country, the NBA, the MLB, NFL, and NHL, that fan base is established. They can just plug in pieces, right? And then the UFC is a little closer to that model, but not quite. And boxing is completely the opposite in that the odds on the sport, the interest, that's good. Look, the Mayweather effect was good and bad. The Mayweather effect made the record more valuable, but he brought so many odds to the sport and so many guys interested in the sport, you can't deny that. Same with Canelo Alvarez right now. Same with Deontay Wilder. Same with I'm just thinking of guys that have that quality. The Roy Jones Jr. Mike Tyson fight, they got $1 million for that fight apiece, which is nuts, right? But these are guys that put their time in the ring. They probably, I mean, they probably made a lot more than most of their fights. I'd say, than people think about all the $20 million paydays that Tyson had. Those are a few fights, but to get $1 million and coming out of retirement for one thing, it's incredible. Why? Because there were no superstars like the Jake Pauls that come and decide he's going to have that's where he's going to make his bones, not MMA, because that learning curve is steep. And
How do you see the fight going with Ben Askren?
so that's the guy that can actually fight, right?
Well, he's a wrestler that transitioned into MMA. He is not a striker. All his fights, if you look at his MMA fights, all he wants to do is he'll grab a single or he'll grab a double. He'll take the guy down and he'll just pummel him. But
He's gonna get smoked
he's
because
not a boxer.
he's gonna get beat, and that's a smart move by whoever Jake Paul's people are, because I know he's got smart. Because I mean I've sat at the table with these guys, they're smart. The boxing game is a low profit game for most people. Even at the top, no one really makes their bones in it, but really smart people come from it and get involved, and it's crazy. But I'm sure he's got someone like that because he's got the money to do that, and a good matchmaker is going to look at the most. Normally, you can set up however you want it, whether you want to give a guy a test and see if he's worth investing, or you want to get some wins to build him up. But what you want to do is you want to do this intelligently. Sorry about that. You want to do this intelligently so people are transfixed by the fight. They're interested in the fight, but there's a chance that people think they can lose. I remember when the McGregor Mayweather fight was going on. I'm sitting here looking. Me and my buddy Cam Awesome, he's a great boxer.
I had him on the podcast.
Oh right, so
Yeah.
Cam, we're sitting here, and we're just like, I don't understand how people think McGregor's even got a hell's chance. It's nuts. But that's because most people don't understand fighting. They don't understand boxing. So there's a certain level of marketability you can play. But he should, I don't think Jake Paul is a good fighter or anything by that nature. But he understands he's on his feet. Um, what I was seeing tape on a guy, based on what you're telling me, he should win. But because I've sparred these wrestling guys who are transitioning to MMA. They just, there's a lot they don't know, because there's a lot you got to learn. So a lot you have to. I mean, people don't realize how much you have to learn to box. It is crazy. When I think about how much I know now, and it's not a knowledge like you sit and study in a book. Like no, it's a real. You go do it. You get the feedback and you refine it, and hopefully you got to do it in a certain way, because if you focus only on offense, you probably won't survive long enough to become really good offensively, because you're going to get picked off, hit, hurt. So you're always so your development has to be balanced, almost to a certain point for you to get good enough to make any type of waves or get noticed. Uh, and I think that Jake Paul is realistically on the guy of converting, and has been relying solely on his wrestling skills to win a fight. I think that he should win. He might probably gonna win by knockout, to be honest with you. It's just that's just based on my experience working with these guys in transition and who need to get sparring, because that's one of the things I do to stay involved and active in the community. I remember how hard it was for me to find sparring. So whenever someone goes, are you able to spar? I'm like, yeah, Or I still like have gear and like good gear that I spent money on since that I purchased since I stopped, actively training to take a professional fight. I would get used to that gear, man. That's good gear. And I'm not gonna sell my gear.
Do you? So I know there's, again, this is like there's two schools of thought, because someone like you're kind of a modern day Renaissance man, right? Like you play chess, you have a degree in physics, you commentate, you have blogs, like you're sharp with the way you articulate yourself, and you're a very smart individual, and you essentially rely on your brain, where someone maybe that's in a blood sport like boxing or MMA, they maybe want to go in other directions where they're not, that is not as much needed. Now, no, and the reason I ask is because
Nah,
I know some people would stop sparring just because they don't want to get hit in the head as much. But you still spar?
come on, man. You know what I tell people?
All right.
You ever see Inception?
Yeah.
And Kim Watanabe's character has got this line where he's talking, and that's the Japanese guy, where he's got this line where he's talking to Leo's character, and they say it twice at the beginning where Cobb wakes up, and he's like, do you want to, and then at the end too, when the movie circles around, he goes, do you want to take a leap or die with an old man full of regret. And that always stuck with me, right? Even before the movie, that whole idea, and I would tell people would ask me that when I fought, even before I was doing all this, because there was no indication that my life was gonna, I was gonna go study physics, for example. Um, but I would always get the question, aren't you worried about dying? Aren't you worried about getting hurt? Aren't you worried about CT? I'm like, look, man, I'm gonna die anyway. Um, the difference is that when I'm old, people are gonna want to. I'm gonna have an interesting story in life that I've lived. I didn't let that worry me. A lot of people I've learned, man, a lot of people are they're afraid of the ring, and rightfully so. Like terrified. I actually had a friend say to me, like, I get regular people, which is most people who aren't interested in trying or being part of it. But I had a friend of me, say he wanted to fight. Um, and I was like, oh yeah, man, come down to the ring, go up. He was like, nah, man, just like fighting the street. And I'm like, why don't you glove up and do it for real? Because then you're going in and you got to be controlled. It's controlled aggression. It's a very interesting combination of traits that have to come together for you to forget excel, survive. You got to channel aggression, and that's hard because there's not. But because aggression by its very nature is it's like what is that? It's like a Mustang. It's like you got to break it, otherwise you're not gonna be able to do anything with it. So you gotta put the saddle on that, and then you have to still your nerves. You got to be calm. Ain't nothing. There's a great clip of Kobe Bryant when he's standing and somebody like jumps at him with the ball and he's just looking and then he doesn't jump, and they always show that clip to show how
Oh yeah, yeah,
still
yeah.
Kobe's nerves are. And that's how you got to be, because what you got to do as a good fighter is you got to be able to not bite on feints. You got to stare down a punch coming at you, because good defense is not just getting out the way. Good defense is making them miss by just enough to where you're in position to counter as quickly as possible. And that means, not going all the way over, like, no, just sitting there and moving a little bit and being able to hit. But to do that, you got to keep your eyes on and not be afraid of getting hit. And that takes it takes a lot. There's a lot that goes into this sport, and people stay away from it. They don't want any part of it. And I think they would love to, but that fear of being injured, being hurt. I mean, I've been injured, I've been hurt, I've had a concussion. It ain't that bad, man. It's just like it's just not that bad. And yeah, people die, but if if you do everything correctly, with the way the rules are now, it's probably not gonna happen to you. But even if it does, how is that any different than how your state's gonna end up in a few decades? Once again, the difference is, when my life is interesting, people can talk about it. I have stories. I have a different tool set. I have a different perspective to look at the world around me. They don't have that,
Yeah.
and I don't worry about the loss of any of my abilities because one, there's a bit of arrogance. I'm like, I got enough to spare, right? But there's also but there's also this. I'm lucky or lucky, fortunate. Obviously there's some hard working on my part, but I never forget how fortunate I am to have been able to be in a position where I left the sport and I'm doing something better. And that is not a subjective measurement. I make way more money. I spend less time and I have a greater impact. We want to by impact, I mean reach. More people know who I am now from my writing than they ever did from fighting. I make more money now from my writing than I ever did boxing.
Mm-hmm.
I spend less time. I have more freedom. When you fight, you don't have freedom. I love traveling. Ain't no traveling when you're fighting. At least not real traveling, because you got to go. You can. Even as a heavyweight, you should watch what you eat. Um, I'm lucky. A lot of guys don't leave fighting and make an upward position. A lot of times they leave and they're going, back to work or they realize they haven't developed any skills whatsoever, but they're too addicted to the easy life, so they turn to some form of crime. It's nuts, man.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have really been able to capitalize and monetize your massive audience, especially on Twitter. And I feel like on Twitter, you hit just as hard as you do in the ring. And that's why so many people are kind of attracted to what you have to say, because you do. I think maybe you rub some people the wrong way because you say it as it is, and some people don't
Yeah,
want to hear it.
but
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 then a large contingency of people do want to hear it, and they do find it refreshing, because the people that speak the truth and don't bullshit and just say it as it is, that's the people you want to listen to.
exactly. And here's the thing about my my style of tweeting or interacting with people is I'm never trying to just be abrasive or just be offensive.
You're not
I
trying to
am
be offensive for the sake of being offensive.
right. I'm here to give, I'm here to help. I'm here to give my perspective. And I think that comes through. And the body, my body of work, the things I put out, people can see, I'm not just trying to say things. I have a book about sobriety. I have multiple articles on my page about forgiveness and dealing with addiction. These things are important to me, and it just so happens that I'm smart enough to be able to. I'm smart enough and conscientious enough. It's not enough to just be intelligent. You have to work hard. And I'm smart enough and I work hard enough to where my writing is able to help people and I'm able to make a living from it. And even if I don't make a direct living from the writing, the audience and the skills I build along the way, I teach them and use them, and it still provides me with the ability to make a difference and then have a good life because of the difference I make.
So you touched upon the sobriety issue. So you don't drink any alcohol at all, right?
I have not had a drop of alcohol. Uh, Actually, I know the exact date, December 23rd, 2013. I'm sitting there like, why am I thinking about this? Uh, December 23rd, 2013 was my first full day of sobriety. I haven't drank since.
Wow. And
And
what spurred that on?
you know, I think every person has the ability to look at their life and go, okay, how does it look compared to how I want it to look?
Hmm.
And when those two things are different, then the next part is asking yourself why, and then having the courage to not only accept that answer, but do something about it. As Hotep Jesus, one of my favorite people to follow, said one day, he talked about his life transformation on a show that I was listening to, and he said, my ego didn't match my lifestyle, or something
Mm.
to that effect, and he wanted to fix that. So I did this soul searching. I'm looking at my life, and things weren't good. I was 27. I was making $9.28 an hour. My social reputation was in tatters with the people, with some of my friends. I didn't like me. I didn't like that I was so consumed by life that alcohol tends to promote. And I looked at what I had to gain potentially, and I said, okay, alcohol is a problem. Let's remove this for now and see where we go. And the original plan was to, like, stop drinking for like 2 years, or stop drinking until I had achieved a certain accolades. But the rest of my life was going so well that I was like, why would I go back? And then I started writing about it, and then I'm reflecting, and I realized part of the thing that drove my excessive drinking, I had some other issues that I didn't deal with, so I started dealing with those, and through that, my mentality about life, or at least my life, with the involvement of alcohol, changed so much that I said, I'm happy. Like that's the thing, is I don't feel like I'm missing anything at this point. I feel like I was missing stuff then, you know, like, cause ain't nothing sadder than you worrying about how you gonna make rent for the month, right? But and part of that calculation, you're like, I got my drinking money, I'm gonna figure this out. My last few months before I stopped drinking, man, I was going to work drunk, and I was like, going on my break, going over to get a beer, but during break, it was bad. So I said, let me make it good. Let me try. Let me get in front of my problems and try to do something about them,
You know,
before they do something about me.
I had Michael Moss on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he wrote this book, Hooked. He actually wrote another book a few years back, Fat Sugar something, I forget. A really good book though. But essentially, in this new book, he's talking about how these food companies have made us addicted to their food. And he was saying that there are people that it's kind of like a spectrum. There are people that can use heroin or coke or drink or
Right.
eat sugars and still have and be responsible citizens. And then there's a percentage, I forget what the percentage is, that they can't just have one Twinkie, right? They have to have 50 Twinkies. They can't have one drink. They have to have the whole bar. And it's just, so would you kind of put yourself in that second box where you weren't able to just have one
Uh,
beer? You would have to have like 5 or 6 or 7.
one thing I've figured out is that for me it was like, it's the best way to put this. For me, it was the behavior under the influence. Right now, granted, there was heavy consumption too. I mean, it wasn't the one beer. What the hell is that? You're right about that part. But then there's also the behavior underneath. I didn't like how I behaved. I didn't like how I was potentially making other people, feel around me, or as a result of my consumption. There was a lot going on. So I figured that it was time to give that a rest, man. Put it down, and make myself a respectable person. Because here's the thing about respect. Um, Respect and being liked, they look real similar. Well, I always say, being liked looks like being respected to people who aren't used to either. And the big difference between the two is that respect is earned, and it is independent of how people feel about you, whether it's positive or negative. It is an assessment almost. It's the regard they hold your approach to a thing or a group of people or a subject. Okay, being liked is being liked is just it, it's when you have a direct effect on someone's feelings. Okay. And that's not always good, or rather, when you make someone else feel good, because you can make someone else feel good at the expense of yourself. And and that's the easiest way to be liked. And then you make someone feel good at the expense of yourself, and then they always want you around. But the condition of you being around is that you got to do something at the expense of yourself. For me, for a lot of people, that's substance abuse. That's drinking a lot. Okay. But when you aim to be respected, then you are no longer focused on whether you make them feel good or not. You're focusing on having a positive impact,
Yeah.
or being effective. I won't say positive or negative, because I think respect at the end of the day is somewhat amoral. You can respect your enemies. You can respect your opponent, and it's because of how effective they are in their approach to their craft. It has nothing to do with how much you like them, especially if they're your opponent and they're trying to mow you down or something. But I started to aim for being respected. I'm mostly because I wanted to respect myself. I wanted to respect myself, and then from there, if other people respect me, great. Because here's the thing: today, I've lost not a lot of friends, but a noticeable amount of people don't talk to me anymore. And I used to think it was because I stopped drinking, but I didn't fall off. I didn't because when you stop a certain thing, and then when your life improves dramatically, um, then they have to question themselves, or the social order is now disrupted, and that bugs a lot of people. And I think that's part of it. But I think the other part is like the whole dynamic changes because I'm no longer trying to be liked, and that changes my behavior, whether I know it or not, right? Um, but for me, like if my focus is on being effective and making a good impression and that kind of thing, there were probably some things that you felt really comfortable around with me doing, whether you like them or not. Is general behavior cues. They signal a certain social ranking, and they're gone, and now that's disrupted. And you gotta decide how you deal with it. And but most people are not very good at adapting to change in this regard. It is, to them, that is no good, and we were gonna bounce out. And how you accept that, or whatever. Like, I don't have any ill feelings or anything. It's just a part of being a human, and that's how humans tend to behave.
Yeah, and we also tend to change. If I look in my 20s, I had so many friends, right? Like I wasn't even focusing on career. I was just literally, I was hanging out with friends all the time. I had so many friends. Now I say I would have maybe five. I'm in touch with maybe five of those friends
Right,
because
and
yeah, go ahead.
you grow, they grow, or hopefully they grow. I mean, maybe not, but the point is people forget something about growth. Growth is it's not this process that takes everyone like it's not linear on a rail. Okay, like isn't okay. One day you're gonna reach the same point I was, or we'll reach that point, and we'll see things the same way. No, growth is unilateral, unidirectional, and univariate, or multivariate, multidirectional, and and they're different rates of growth. In other words, people want different directions at different times at different speeds. Um, and sometimes, because it doesn't look like growth to us. It just looks like it looks like regression a lot of to sometimes. It's like, oh, you changed. How could you think that, right? You experience this a lot if you're from the. How old are you?
Too old. 37.
Oh, dude, I'm 36. Okay, so we're both from the Facebook era, right? Where a lot of people are on Facebook now spouting a bunch of political stuff, and we're like, how'd you think that? But I don't see it that way. I see every person, they have grown on their own. They've come into their own thoughts, beliefs, feelings. And if I'm going this way and you're going that way, it's easy for me to think that you have regressed. The reality is growth has its own kind of, each person has their frame of reference, and they've matured, grown, and developed in their feelings. Whether they're accurate or not is entirely beyond the point, because most of the things we think and feel are not accurate almost by definition of the word opinion, right? So we're looking at it from our perspective, and we think that they have not grown, but the reality is they've grown. It's just in a different direction, and that means we've grown apart. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of life. People think that's a big deal, though.
Yeah, I think how did Muhammad Ali say it? If you're the same person that you were when you're 50, then when you were 20, you've lost 30 years. I think that's
Absolutely.
pretty accurate. But I wanna tap into, because I feel like you're positioned in a very interesting place where, and I'm assuming this, and I you can probably clear it up, but you I think a lot of guys look up to you, right? And I wonder, society kind of tells guys now to be less masculine, be less whatever a guy is supposed to be typically, right? Like we're seeing the femininity of society happening, and I'm not saying one is good, one is bad. I'm just stating what I think is happening right now. And I feel like a lot of guys look up to you, and you're a boxer, you're a big guy, you're masculine, but you're still sharp and you're witty and you're smart and you're intelligent and you have all these other traits that supposedly don't go along with masculinity. And I'm wondering how guys are approaching you to ask for suggestions, for tips, for something maybe to change your life. Maybe they want to be more like you. Like, what type of guys are coming up to you or emailing you, and what are some of the things that they're telling you? I'm just interested into that insight.
Uh, you know, uh, a lot of the questions they revolve around the same three areas that are foundational to someone's life: their health, how to build, workout and stuff like that; their wealth, how to make money, and different ideas like that, and their relationships, how to meet a girl or something like that. Okay, but here's what I find is interesting. Very rarely is the question phrased outright as how do I do X, Y, or Z.
Hmm.
It often comes in the form of how do I stop doing, you know, W,
Oh,
Q, or Z, X. It's different, um, because people tend to reach out when things are wrong, and then they want to know how to fix the wrong thing. That's good, man. That's cool. I don't care either way. I'm very happy to help. But for example, I run a group and I have a lot of articles about, not a lot, a decent amount of articles, I guess, about porn addiction, and I like to help guys deal with that. So a lot of guys will say, how do I deal with this? How do I stop watching porn? How do I what are your suggestions, habits on dealing, suggestions, and tips for dealing with addiction, dealing with the cravings? Okay, I get a lot of that. I get a lot of guys who are like, my parents want me to go do this in school, or I want to do this online. Um, what do what do you suggest I do? And sometimes, I'm writing a newsletter right now. I tell guys, man, look, you ain't ready yet. Just go get a job. Like people that made jobs seem like such a bad thing, man. Look,
yeah.
a lot of these motherfuckers need, like, they don't have it, whatever it is. And they need to, they would be very happy, very content, very fulfilled. Going to put their 40, 50 hours a weekend, driving trucks or fixing wires, or some shit like anything like that, and it's going to make their life and the lives of a lot of people happier and impactful and reward them. So it just depends, but a lot of times I'm getting questions that center around how to just be a happier God, and usually by negativity. Though, how do I stop doing something that is making me unhappy?
Yeah, there's this notion that everyone wants to be a celebrity or a millionaire like yesterday. Like everyone wants
Right.
immediate satisfaction and gratification. And how can
No.
I be like that TikTok star that's bringing in? It seems so simple. I just put out videos, and there's a whole industry. There's a whole industry behind that, right? Like there's a lot of people selling you on dreams and how to make a 6, 7, 8 figure company and how to do sales. It's all bullshit. Like all of it is bullshit.
Well, yeah, because what tends to happen, anybody with any experience, they come to a conclusion. They they at least I've come to a conclusion, and I've talked to a few people, and they've come to maybe not the way I'll phrase it, but the general idea that there are fundamental principles, right? Once you understand those, but you can go play with them.
Hmm.
But the path, I mean, the path is infinite. The principles behind the path are pretty they're the same. But the way to do it, I mean, if anyone tells you this is how you make money, you got to be careful. You got to be. I'm not gonna say a I'm not gonna say it's automatically a scam or BS. At the same time, your alarm has to go up. Your eyes have to be looking at this information the right way, because if not, you can easily fall for something
Yeah.
something that will make you end up being end up being one of the contributors to their fund, and that's the fund they use to tell people I make money. So you get these
Yeah.
guys that make money teaching people how to make money.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the
It's
like?
a vicious cycle.
If you look at like my products, man, I'm very careful to stay away from talking about um, how to make money specifically, because I don't ever I want to, at the very least. I got one product coming out where I talk about like digital product creation, but like but I've got the receipts to kind of show that, and
No,
it
what you do is very different. I'm talking about the people that have never actually built a company or done sales or done anything. Their whole shtick is I am selling I'm selling these tricks or insider tricks, whatever it is, how to make money. And the way they're making money is by selling you these courses, these
right.
ebooks, these things, and you buy into that. They're making money, and now they can show that they've made money. And it's this vicious loop that happens. And they don't actually have a product or a company, or they don't have the credentials like you do that you've done something. Their whole shtick is this, and it seems to have become much more I don't know, accessible because of YouTube, Clubhouse, and all the other places where
Oh
now
yeah, for sure.
it's everywhere.
Because here's the crazy part: the marketing principles are great.
Yeah,
They work. And if you put that behind some nonsense, you're going to be able to go probably further than uh, you're going to be able to go pretty far. It's going to be really interesting what you can accomplish saying, using marketing tricks behind we'll say an unsavory or untrustworthy product.
yeah.
But
Um,
that's just a good lesson to I think to take away from the internet, is that if you gotta look and see what a person has to offer outside of what they're saying they can do. Like like I have to be now I'm careful, because as I was coming up I didn't realize, but now I do. Now anyone that very rarely am I on the beneficiary, the beneficiary end of someone partnering with me, because I'm the one that's built. I mean, the thing you can't buy that takes time. You built the name, you built cloud, you built it. You built a lot of. You build it up. You go type in Google. There's, I was saying yesterday, I got 110 articles on my site. I think a little more. That's not that's cloud. That shows I've been writing for a long time and
Yeah.
doing this and putting ideas out. Okay, so so you gotta go. Okay, this guy we can trust, or at least there's a lot of trust built up there. If someone else decides they want to work and partner with me, they're going to benefit from all of that. You got to factor it in. That's a really hard. Well, here's something I've learned. It's a really hard thing to explain to guys. They don't want to hear that it's not a 50-50 partnership. And I'm like, you don't understand. I don't care what you bring. This is selling. Short of you bringing a name and clout and credibility, I'm the one taking that risk. Putting my name, my
Your
clout on
name.
the line.
Yeah.
They don't get that. They don't see that. I've learned a lot, but they don't get it. They don't see it because they haven't done it. They don't understand how. To them, it's all tactical. No. There's a long strategy and a long haul and question. You don't just you can't buy into it. Now, if you could buy it, that'd be different. But right now, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we have to finish up before we finish up. I had a thought earlier this morning, and I was just interested to get your insight because I know you're a deep thinker, and this might interest you. I've been trying to, the brain is a muscle essentially, right? And just like I can make my triceps and biceps bigger, I in theory make my brain smarter, better, get and retain information better. And I was thinking, like, are our brains like computers in a way that they store all the information we've had since childhood? They've kind of it stores it, and it is accessible like a computer where I can pull up a file from January 24, 2016, and it's a memory, right? And there are people that are able to do that. Some stuff.
Oh yeah.
Or our brains, it's kind of like a juicer where stuff comes in one end and it goes out the other, and some kind of sticks in the middle. And I'm just wondering, like, are savants, that they are what they are, and the rest of us are not able to get to that level, or do you think it's something that we're able to train to get to a higher level?
Well, first, one of the simple answer, we can train to a lot, probably more than we ever imagine. We're just, there are. I think, and this is speculation. This is not something that's written down somewhere, but I think that our limits, right now, are, I mean, we're regressing. Remember before, people used to have to be able to think about how many phone numbers you used to be able to store in your mind.
Yeah.
I know that because I had to, and now good luck, because that's atrophy. Wim Hof talks about this a lot, about how, like, we have these these abilities, right? And they're done crazy. We just don't use them anymore. He says that, like, before he used GPS, he used to be able to navigate his city, find a place. And I think about that. I was like, yeah, that's true. We used to have a different language and a way to describe things and figure things out beforehand. Now we don't have that. So now no one can navigate without GPS. And he goes, now it's dead in his brain. It's evolved out. So I think that we can do that. With that said, I'll take it the other way. One of the things I looked at, I remember reading a thing about photographic memories and stuff like that, eidetic memory, and they think that is not an advantage. It's a mutation, because one of the things. So what's trauma? Trauma is when you think about a thing, it has not faded in your memory. It is if it had just happened. And until you deal with it, and you can, like, for whatever reason, why it's like it just happened. The issue is that you still respond to, because eventually things just fade over time. Like, I mean, I can't remember half the shit I was like really angry about. We did a fun experiment about this inadvertently last night. Um, my fiance's sister this here, she was like, okay, uh, she had a memory on Facebook that came up that said there were that she said like thoughts and prayers go out to the people that were massacred or killed or something like that on Easter Sunday, and she couldn't remember it at all. What she was talking about. She had to Google it and found out. I guess not last year. This was in 2015. 140 people were massacred in Kenya on Good Friday, I think, or something like that.
Wow.
But it didn't couldn't remember it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's an event. It's freaking what is that? 6 years ago, and no attachment to it. And think about how many things like that are in your life that even if you're involved with them, eventually you just forget. And then somewhere reminds you, you're like, oh, that's right. I was really mad or really something about that, right? I don't think that the trade off is that you'll have to remember everything. And that's not good. They talk about, I can't remember what the book is where I got this idea from, but they talk about that's one of we think it would be a blessing, but the reality is it's a curse for people with that kind of memory. Could we train it to where you get the best of both worlds? I mean, probably. But that would require someone like figuring it out, teaching it in mass. Humans having suddenly out of nowhere the patience to learn something that requires discipline. Um, I don't want to say there's no hope, but I think the qualities required to do something like that are so rare and so unlikely to be honed and developed. And plus, there's an issue of opportunity cost. You got to figure out what you're going to do with your finite time on this planet, and would your time on the planet really be benefited greatly or enough to buy this? Uh, I think that any advances like that are not necessary to our survival.
Mhm.
Uh, Tend to take a back seat or make our life easier because they don't, because that doesn't make our life easier. That sounds like uh training. Like a lot of training. So we go, oh, no, forget that. I'd rather just watch the Netflix.
Yeah.
A lot of distractions too, man. Like
Oh, so
this
many.
day and age.
So many. Yeah, I don't think it'll be good to remember everything, but it would be very cool if we could just if we were able to pinpoint like a certain memory that we need or a certain event that happened and just take it out of that file, just that memory. Oh, January 24th, 2008. Click. Just I think there was actually a
Yeah.
Black Mirror episode that was something similar. And I don't think that ended very, very well. So actually, maybe not. Second thought.
There's a If you ever watched the Sherlock Holmes, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch, there's a villain who has a file of all these like secrets and everything, and it's just in his memory.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he
No.
like treats it, the whole episode you think is like a file cabinet or something. In reality, that's just how he visualizes everything as these like compartments. And he opens up a drawer and something is in there that he tucked away.
I gotta watch that. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh yeah, it's a great. I like it because you can watch the whole thing, and what is it? 1, 2, 3 seasons plus 4, 4, 3. So there's 15 episodes.
Okay. That's it?
it, it actually might be 13. Might have done the math wrong, but yeah, it's great. They're about an hour a piece because everything today, man, it's really designed. People got to be careful, and I'm very careful about this. This is a great piece of information. I try and give people a great piece of advice. Is all of these shows have to be good now. Like when someone tells me a show is good, you got to watch them. Like, oh, if it wasn't good, you wouldn't know about it because they got to compete. They got to win on attention. And now we can like measure directly. It's no longer estimates from Nielsen SoundScan. We have the direct data from the streaming service. So we know who's good and who isn't. And since people aren't paying for ads, now they're trying to make sure that whatever they put on is fire.
Yeah.
Um, so all of it's going to be good. It's going to be good enough to take your life. Like, like people like if you like, for example, I don't start a series because if it's good, you want to watch the whole thing. I try not to start anything, but they're designed that way. And like we were talking about with addiction, I'm sure there's some people can just sit down, watch one, watch two, but how do most people consume this stuff? They binge it. That's a lot of like I go every now and then I'll say, oh, I should watch The Wire again, and then I
Oh,
remember, man,
greatest
that
show
like.
ever.
And it's not even that long. It's only 5 seasons, about 12 episodes a season. So we're talking 60 hours of my life. But that's 60 hours, man. That's 3 days almost.
Yep.
2.5. But not 2.5. Well, what could I do with 2.5 hours? Like, remember, I'm sitting on my ass watching. Like, so I'm doing nothing. I'm reaching my BMR and probably eating some garbage. So
Yeah.
you got to think. What could you do with that time? So a lot of these shows, you have to be very careful and
Yeah.
not just
No, you have to be stingy with your time. Your time is the one thing that you're not going to get back. It's, unlike money, unlike a relationship, unlike anything else. It's time is the one thing that it's ephemeral, and it's once
it
the
ain't one.
second passed, it's gone. It's not coming back.
Yeah, you're done. So you better do
Better use it
something.
wisely.
Yeah.
All right. Ed Lattimore, this was a lot of fun, my friend.
Hey man, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me.
No, man. Thank you for coming on. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. So again, thank you so much. Where can people find you? What are some of the best places, and where can they follow?
Oh yeah, man, I'm Ed Lattimore on every platform. Facebook, Ed Lattimore, Twitter, Ed Lattimore, Instagram, Ed Lattimore, website, edlattimore.com. So really taking my name and pimped it out. So go wherever you search, you'll be able to find me that way.
Yeah, give this man a follow. Is probably one of my favorite Twitter accounts. So, thank you for the entertainment and for the great insights.
Hey, no problem, man. Thank you for this great conversation.
All right, take care, my friend.
See you.